Welcome to Ken's Korner Podcast, Season 4.
Hi, everyone. This is Ken from Ken's Korner, and today we got our first NHL referee. Retired now, but he is a man that's been in almost 1,100 career games, 150 plus playoff games. He got called because one of his calls, the famous Mary Lemieux Garage League quote. Anyway, I want to introduce you to Ron Hoggarth. Thank you for coming today, sir. It's all my honor and my pleasure.
Oh, it's great. Thank you for having me. It's 1,190 games, but who cares about 90 games? They went by quick. Probably 2,000 professional games. When we first started, we used to work the Central Hockey League, the American Hockey League, and the Western League. Not like today, the kids come right out of junior, right out of college as referees, former players, and jump right in. They wanted us to have some experience, and that was during the Broad Street Bully days. So they used to send us to the American League. The Richmond Robins had a tougher team than the Philly Flyers, if you can imagine, and for instance, one night in Richmond, Virginia, during the Detroit versus the Detroit team, I had 5 bench emptyings, if you can imagine. That was the crazy days. The next night up into Philadelphia, we would work up and down, and so I had 1 bench emptying with Schultz and all the boys, and got it all straightened away in about 3 minutes. The timekeeper said to me, he says, "How'd you do that?" I said, "Practice." So it was amazing back in those days, but. Yeah, it was a long career, great career, and I enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for that. I want to take you back to the start and what led you to become an NHL referee. Like, did you always dream of being a referee, or was your dreams more on being an NHL hockey player? Because obviously you could skate with the best of them.
Well, actually, I was drafted by the Kitchener Rangers, and then I had a scholarship, partial scholarship at Cornell. And, I grew up on a farm. My parents really couldn't afford to send me, to a partial scholarship. So I went to McMaster University, and I played for the Marlins. But I also started to referee high school hockey, men's hockey. And I paid my way through university by refereeing out of the Hamilton. I do broom ball at 7 o'clock in the morning. But being in Hamilton, I used to do all the Hamilton Red Wing games. Some of the referees would pick me up and take me over to Galt for Senior A. So I got a lot of experience doing that, but living kind of in that area and going to school. But basically refereeing was because I was a poor, starving student and needed a job. And once I, became into the OHA and the at that time, that's what the Junior A was Senior A. So I decided that maybe it was a good thing, and I went to visit a gentleman named Bill Friday, who has since passed. He was living in Hamilton, referee. He says, "How to become a referee? I think I'd like to be one." And he says, "Well, you got to go to a camp." So we went up to a camp in Haliburton. There was a bunch of us. And then I got invited to an NHL camp in Toronto, 60 of us from all over North America. And I was the first guy. Every time there was a stoppage of whistle, I was in Scotty Morrison's face. He was a little shorter than I was. So he hired me. There was 6 of us: Andy Van Helmond, Scampanello, some of the Hall of Famers of the 71 class. And so that's how I became a referee. And then kind of headed away. They would send us. My first road trip was 28 days, home for 3 and gone for 21. So it was a very, very different business back in those days, but still enjoyable.
Yeah. Can you take me back to that very first game where you were on that ice, NHL, for your first time? Was that a surreal moment for you?
Yes, it was. Believe it or not, I was in Kansas City Scouts back in, because we would work in the American League. So it was about 4 years later. You know what? It was kind of surreal at the time. You come up through the minors, but we had a lot of conditioning, and we had a lot of experience by working in the minor league. So when you got there at that time, I think we were ready. And so that's it was unreal. I think more so was my first Stanley Cup playoff game. I remember that more than anything. It was in Long Island, and it was versus the LA Kings. And I skated out on the ice, and I could not feel my feet. They were numb. And I'm skating around. I'm going, you got to be kidding me. And I was banging my feet on trying to get them, but stood at center ice, about to drop the puck. They played the anthem, and away we went, and it went away. So, that was another time that was very important, I think.
Yeah. You've already disclosed to me that your allegiance since retiring is to the Toronto Maple Leafs. So I want to take you back to that first game as a referee at a Toronto Maple Leaf game where the butterflies reacting that night.
Well, you know what? I played for, I'm a Barrie boy, born and raised here. I live up in Orillia now, but we played in the All-Ontario Midget Championships against Brian Glennie and guys like that. And I was a big guy, could skate, but we stepped on the Maple Leaf Gardens, and we're skating around, and I fire the puck against the boards, and there's no sound. And then all of a sudden, the Marlies come out. They're all like grown men. I think we were 15, 16. They seemed like grown men. Mm-hmm. So when my very first game at the Gardens, it kind of I went back to that the first time I was on the ice as a midget, growing up, and then here. And when you skate on the ice, it's very special, because you watch it, you see it. It was an old barn at the time, and our dressing room was right beside the director's room. It was a little tiny room tucked in the corner. But no, it was something. You skated out, and you felt that you had made it when I think you skated on Maple Leaf Gardens.
Yeah, that was definitely a church of the NHL. I have to agree. And just as a fan in the crowd, as a young man, I could tell you we felt the same thing up there in the stands. So I appreciate that answer. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about Mario Lemieux. Now, I guess it was late in a game versus Pittsburgh. I'm not sure who they were playing, but you ejected Mario Lemieux, Kevin Stevens, and Jaromir Jagr, and it prompted Mario afterwards to call it a garage league. Do you want to speak on this occasion a little bit, Ron?
Well, that's probably the worst night of my career, and the biggest mistake. And afterwards in life, I always tell people you have to admit your mistakes. So this was an absolute big mistake on my part. Mario Lemieux skated out on the ice before the game. We were in Washington. It was a Sunday afternoon. I had a few days off, and I was heading to Florida for a little bit of a break. It was Super Bowl Sunday in the end of January, and Mario skates over to me. He says, "Hoagie," in his French accent. "Hoagie," he says, "put the whistle away. We got a party back in Pittsburgh, Super Bowl, perfect." So I put the whistle away, and you know what? It got out of hand. It grew. It happened that near late in the period, there was. I finally said, I got to get this back in the hand. So I said to Mario, I said, "You got to go talk to Scotty Bowman." It was 1991. The team, they ended up winning the cup that year. I said, "You got to talk to Scotty Bowman." And Mario says, "Hoagie, not my job." So I go to Paul Coffey, and I said, "Coffey, I gotta start calling things. Got to tell Scotty I'm going to start." And he said, "I'd love to, but I'm in a contract dispute with those people, and I won't talk to them. They won't talk to me." So it ended up, trying to think, Murphy, I think it was playing Larry Murphy, and he said went over to talk to Scotty, but it grew and grew and grew, and what happened was Jagr was going down the ice. And Rod Langway actually took him out right into the boards, and I didn't call it. I mean, it was an absolute awful penalty. And as I'm getting out of the way, Jagr got up and took the feet out from underneath me, right in the air. And I'm laying in the corner, so I ejected Jagr. He got 10 games out of that one, as a matter of fact. And now we're trying to get things straightened away, and they're all off chirping. And so I ended up throwing Mario out, Ulf Samuelsson, Kevin Stevens, all the players, all the major guys gone, and it was a real fiasco and a big mistake. But it was about 3 weeks. I got threatening phone calls at house. That I picked up the phone and is this Hoggarth, the officiator, with a Pennsylvania accent? Yeah. Next time you come to Pennsylvania, you'll be shot. So it was a tough time, but we're in LA, and I'm standing, and I got Wayne Gretzky right here and Mario on the other taking the opening face-off, and Wayne's always got a great sense of humor. He says, "Hoagie," he says, "you and Mario kissed and made up?" And I says, "Well, no, it wasn't very good." And Mario says right away, he says, "Hoagie," he says, I shouldn't have called it a garage league." He says, "But you still are fat, aren't you?" And Wayne chirps up. He says, "Yeah, Hoagie," he says, "here we are in Hollywood, that we're making, between the three of us, we're making a little over $12 million. I went, "Yeah." Wayne goes, "Yeah, I'm making 8, Mario's making 4, and you're the little over, right, Hoagie?" So it kind of cooled things down a little bit. But you know what? You go through times. I was wrong, totally wrong in letting it get out of hand, and I put that right on my shoulders.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for talking about it here. We're going to talk about something a little bit more upbeat, and you've already brought up his name, Wayne Gretzky. You were, in fact, refereeing the game that he broke the record for most points in the NHL. Can you talk about that game a little bit, Mr. Hoggarth?
Sure. This was the game back that Wayne was in Los Angeles and playing for Los Angeles. He was back in Edmonton, or they were playing back, and it was kind of neat because Gordie Howe was there. Wayne's mom was still living, his dad was still living. They were there, and so it started off the game, and I stuck right beside Wayne all night, and finally about halfway through the second period, he used the F word. He says, "Hoagie, get the F out of the way." I says, "No, Wayne, you're going to get the point behind me in the picture." So I have the picture signed by Wayne hanging in my office. It's a neat thing. But I got after just a couple of years ago, my wife and I, we went out to Wayne's fantasy camp at the Bellagio. Danny Marawali, another referee, and I, and we talked about that. We had a real good time. It was what a great time it was with Wayne, and he had 100 guys at his fantasy camp. It was amazing.
That's so amazing. Now, I don't know if you know, but I'm from Stouffville, Ontario, which isn't too far away from you up there in Barrie, to be honest.
Brad May's home. Brad May's home. So Brad May's home in Stouffville.
Yes, Brad May's home, but also Keith Acton's home.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Oh, I do remember Keith. That's right. I do remember Keith. Yeah, he was a councilman for Stouffville at one time.
He is right now, in fact, a councilman, and right there. He's also the owner of Boston Pizza in town, and we did a show here not too long ago, and he in fact said that he was a burger and Mary Lemieux and Wayne Gretzky were a steak. Can you talk on Keith Acton at all? Any interactions with him during your game?
You know what? There was 2 guys that were really little instigators. Kenny Linsman was number 1 by a way ahead. And not too far behind was Mr. Acton, Mr. Keith Acton. He chirped and chirped. He wasn't a big guy, but he sure caused us a lot of grief sometimes. And I've been to several corporate functions, and I said, "You were a pain in the ass." He says, "No, I wasn't." "Yes, you were." And but he had a great career. He wasn't that big, great skater, great competitor. And he made it out. But I'll tell you, he made it difficult for the referees. For all the chirping that he did. And I'm surprised that somebody didn't punch him in the head, because anytime he was on the ice and chirping, he always had a big guy standing behind him. So he was a very intelligent young man.
Yeah, in fact, we spoke about one of the times that he had Craig Berube on his team, and it was the year that he got the most penalty minutes in his career, was 130 minutes, and one of the fans at the live event asked him why he went from no penalties to 130. He said, "Well, I was on a line with Craig Berube that year." So I'm sure that was quite the mix.
Well, you know what, Craig was a real trooper too off the ice. He really got things going. So he seems to have settled down a bit, and I really hope that he does well there, because the great thing about living in Southern Ontario, if the Leafs could ever get to the Cup, it would be unbelievably what restaurants, just the hoopla. So we're hoping for that they can go a little further. I think it'd be great.
Yeah, that would be amazing. I only have a couple of things more to ask you about, and I really want to get your feeling on the last NHL game that you refereed in. Were you, in fact, did you know that was your last game? And if so, was it like? Did you just take it all in that night?
Well, I had a pretty good idea when Gary Bettman came in. Things were changing. They were going to go to a two-man system, and I was one of the senior guys getting paid the most. I had a pretty good feeling that my time was up. I was on the negotiating committee for 14 of my 23 years when we negotiated the contract. So players loved me, but management maybe didn't. So I had a really good idea that I was in Boston, as a matter of fact. And the two linesmen, Kevin Collins and Patty DiPuzzo, and of course Patty lived in New Jersey, so he was flying home. Kevin was driving home that night, and now I see the guys what they've really done. They've really changed things. For their last game, they know that it's their last game. They have a crew that follows them and films it. Back when I was working, both the linesmen left. And I says, I think this is my last game. And they said, oh, well, we got to go. So they left. And there was a Grant was a policeman who looked after our room in Boston, a little wee tiny room tucked away. And he says, I'll be right back. So he went and got a couple beers. So him and I sat in that little room. And he says, you think it's over? I do. And we kind of reminisced about the great times at, the Boston Gardens and, all the time. So. But you know what? Life goes on. I knew that things it doesn't last forever. And when Gary Bettman came in, we knew it was a big change. He took the names off, put the numbers on. It was going to be tough negotiating. They were going to two referees, so they came up with they got rid of some of the top salaries, and they were getting paid half of what we were. So that's business, and I knew it was happening. But I had a swimming pool business to go to, and that I had started, and I ran it for a number of years in Barrie. Got bought out a few years back, and decided to go back to school. And I have my commercial real estate license, so
Yeah.
I dabble in that. But the big thing is, my wife and I we travel. We just got back a week ago from Spain. We did 160 kilometers hiking on the El Camino. So that's the things you're able to travel and see the grandchildren. We got grandchildren in Cincinnati. I got some here in Barrie as well. But life goes on. There's life after hockey, and you have to make it. You can sulk, and I know that a lot of players that I traveled with the old timers, the legends of hockey, for 15 years across Canada, and a lot of the players are bitter. With they didn't make the money and. You can't be bitter. Life is too short. Hockey, NHL is one of the greatest jobs you could ever imagine having. So I really enjoy it. But there's life after hockey, and you got to go on. As long as you got your health, it's okay.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for that analogy. I was going to ask you about your career afterwards, so thank you for adding that in. From what I've read, is you've learned a little bit about the real estate business while you were running your pool and spa company, which inspired you to, in fact, go back to school. And your celebrity status actually kind of helps you out in that area, I believe. I love the Barrie area. I have friends in Aurelia, so it's amazing. And I don't blame you on Spain. A friend of mine who comes on Ken's Corner here quite often, Paul Henny Hendrick, has quite the connection to Spain and talks very highly of it out there as well. So that must have been amazing for you to be over there and experience that part of life.
Well, it was good. It was great. As they say, it was pretty tough. 160K is a long way to walk and hike, but wife and I did it. We enjoyed it, and but I try to stay reasonably good shape. I'm 76 now, so it's a lot of our unfortunately a lot of our guys that I worked with have passed away, and so life is good, and as they keep your health, and life is good.
Thank you so much. And on that note, we're going to finish off here today. I want to thank you, Mr. Hoggarth, for coming on. I know you're a busy real estate guy now, so I'll let you get back to your day's work. And my name's Ken. I'm here on Ken's Corner with professional NHL referee, retired Ron Hoggarth. Thank you so much. You have a great day, Ron.
Thanks for having me.